Lecture 8: The Global Economy and the Great Depression, 1920s, 1930s. 1. The economic boom of the 1920s and the expansion of financial capitalism. The 1920s, often called the Roaring Twenties, were marked by a period of economic prosperity, technological innovation, and cultural dynamism, particularly in the United States and Western Europe. This post-World War I era saw rapid industrial expansion, significant productivity increases due to the spread of scientific management, Taylorism, and consumer-driven growth powered by mass production and the rise of consumer credit. The automobile industry, led by Ford's assembly line techniques, played a pivotal role in transforming the U.S. economy and symbolized broader industrial progress. At the heart of this growth was the rise of financial capitalism, which emphasized the power of banks, investment houses, and financial markets over industrial production. The U.S. became the new center of global finance, replacing Great Britain as the world's largest creditor nation. The New York Stock Exchange saw an explosion of investment, with rising stock prices fueled by easy credit, speculation, and the growing influence of investment trusts. Moreover, the 1920s saw an expansion of international lending, especially from U.S. banks to Europe and Latin America. War-torn European nations, heavily indebted from World War I, relied on American loans to stabilize their economies and currencies. Germany, in particular, was dependent on American capital to meet reparations payments under the Dawes Plan. 1924, creating a fragile financial interdependence. However, beneath the surface of prosperity lay growing imbalances. Agricultural overproduction led to falling prices, and rural poverty and income inequality grew sharply. Furthermore, much of the economic boom was based on unsustainable speculative activity, and global trade imbalances persisted, especially with the United States running large trade surpluses. 2. The 1929 Great Depression and its key causes. The Wall Street crash of October 1929 marked the beginning of a profound and prolonged global economic crisis. Though the stock market crash was a dramatic and symbolic event, it was not the sole cause of the Great Depression. Rather, it was the trigger that exposed underlying weaknesses in the global economic and financial system. Key causes of the Great Depression include overproduction and underconsumption. Industrial and agricultural sectors were producing more goods than consumers could afford, leading to falling prices and layoffs. Speculative financial practices, rampant speculation in stocks, often bought on margin with borrowed money, created an unsustainable asset bubble. When investor confidence collapsed, the bubble burst. Bank failures and credit contraction. The crash led to a massive loss of confidence in banks, causing bank runs and the collapse of thousands of financial institutions. As banks failed, credit dried up, leading to a sharp contraction in investment and consumption. The gold standard. The International Gold Standard System, which fixed currencies to gold, limited countries' ability to respond flexibly to the crisis. Nations were reluctant to devalue their currencies or inflate their economies due to the fear of capital flight and loss of gold reserves. Global trade collapse. The U.S. Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act 1930 imposed high tariffs on imported goods, triggering a wave of retaliatory protectionism across the world. Global trade declined dramatically, worsening the crisis. The Great Depression was not merely a financial collapse, but a structural crisis of capitalism. It reflected deep imbalances in income distribution, production, and global capital flows that could no longer be sustained without systemic reforms. 3. The impact of the Great Depression on the global economy. The effects of the Great Depression were global and devastating. By 1932, world industrial production had fallen by more than 36%. Global trade had declined by 2/3, and unemployment reached unprecedented levels. In the U.S., unemployment soared to 25%, and in Germany, it rose to over 30%, leading to severe social unrest. Economic consequences included mass unemployment. In both industrialized and developing nations, workers were laid off in massive numbers, leading to widespread poverty and homelessness. Agricultural crisis. Farmers faced collapsing prices and widespread foreclosures. In the U.S., the Dust Bowl further compounded the misery in rural areas. Currency devaluations. Countries that abandoned the gold standard earlier, e.g. the UK, in 1931, were able to recover faster by stimulating exports, while those who stayed on gold, like France, suffered prolonged deflation and stagnation. Collapse of global trade. As countries raised tariffs to protect domestic industries, global trade shrank significantly, which deepened the economic contraction. Political instability. The Depression undermined confidence in liberal democracy and capitalism, contributing to the rise of extremist ideologies. In Germany, economic despair was a major factor in the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. In many countries, the crisis intensified. Social conflicts and political polarization. Global variations in impact. The United States suffered a deep and prolonged downturn until recovery began. With the New Deal and wartime mobilization in the late 1930s, Europe experienced varying degrees of collapse. Germany, Austria, and Hungary were among the worst hit. Latin America, dependent on commodity exports, was hit by falling prices. But some nations like Brazil and Mexico responded with import substitution. Industrialization. The Soviet Union, isolated from the global capitalist economy, was largely unaffected and used the crisis to promote the superiority of central planning. 4. National responses, the New Deal, and planned economies. The United States, the New Deal. In response to the crisis, American President Franklin D. Roosevelt launched the New Deal 1933-1939, a series of economic and social reforms aimed at recovery, relief, and reform. The New Deal represented a shift from laissez-faire capitalism to state intervention and regulation. Key features of the New Deal included relief programs, initiatives like the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, and the Works Progress Administration, WPA, provided jobs and income to the unemployed. Banking reforms, the Emergency Banking Act, and the creation of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, restored confidence in the banking system. Financial regulations, the Securities Exchange Act, established the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to oversee the stock market and prevent future crashes. Agricultural adjustment, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, aimed to raise farm prices by controlling production. Social Security Act 1935 introduced pensions for the elderly and unemployment insurance, laying the foundation for the modern U.S. welfare state. While the New Deal did not fully end the Depression, it stabilized the economy, redefined the role of the federal government, and created a safety net for future generations. The Soviet Union planned economy and 5-year plans. While the capitalist world plunged into crisis, the Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, promoted its economic system as a successful alternative. The USSR implemented centralized planning through 5-year plans, beginning in 1928. Key aspects of Soviet economic policy during this period included forced industrialization. Massive state investments were funneled into heavy industry, especially steel, coal, and machinery. Collectivization of agriculture. Private farms were abolished and merged into collective farms, kolkhozes, leading to widespread resistance and famine, notably the Holodomor in Ukraine. No reliance on foreign capital. Unlike the West, the USSR avoided entanglement in global financial markets and thus escaped the direct effects of the Depression. By the mid-1930s, Soviet industrial output had increased dramatically, although at the cost of human suffering, political repression, and economic inefficiency. Nonetheless, the Soviet model gained appeal among left-wing intellectuals and leaders in the West, who were disillusioned with capitalism. Conclusion. The Great Depression was the most severe global economic crisis of the 20th century, marking a turning point in the history of capitalism and international economic relations. It revealed the fragility of financial capitalism, exposed the limitations of the gold standard, and shattered faith in unregulated markets. The crisis prompted a re-evaluation of the role of the state in economic life, paving the way for Keynesian economics and the post-World War II welfare state. At the same time, it highlighted the divergent paths that nations could take in response to economic collapse, from Roosevelt's reformist New Deal to Stalin's authoritarian planning. The legacy of the Great Depression thus shaped the political and economic order of the mid-20th century and left a lasting impact on global governance, ideology, and economic policy.